Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. I'm joined now by Daniel Greenfield, who is a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center and writes at frontpagemag.com. Daniel, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
So you wrote a piece on Tuesday titled Pelosi's Heroes Act Forces Unemployed Americans to Compete with Illegal Aliens. Talk more about that.
What they're calling protections for essential critical infrastructure workers. Now, that sounds very serious and important. We need these critical essential infrastructure workers. When you actually get down to the nitty-gritty, what they're talking about is basically exempting anybody in the food industry and a number of other industries from deportation and actually allowing illegal aliens to apply for these jobs. So we're talking cafeteria workers, we're talking janitors, we're talking the guy who puts out the rat traps at a grain warehouse. We're talking pretty much anybody in any way involved in food, from the lettuce pickers right down to the guy who's turning off the lights at a local bodega. So this is a huge, huge amnesty. We can't even measure how many people it potentially covers. All these people are defined as critical infrastructure workers.
So here in Michigan, where I am, there's a lot of problems going on with the economy. Many sectors of the economy are still shut down. People are out of work. I was at the protest, the Operation Haircut protest on Wednesday at the state capitol, where people were just saying, we want to go back to work. We want to be able to provide for our families. We don't want welfare. We don't want to, have to compete with illegal aliens for jobs. What sort of message do you think Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats are sending to people like that?
Well, they're sending the message to them that they matter less than illegal aliens do. They're telling them that they're going to have to compete with illegal aliens for jobs, and if they're unhappy about it, we'll send you another check.
Explain a little bit the impact that illegal immigration and specifically illegal aliens have on income and compensation for Americans.
So particularly now when you have huge numbers of people out of work, and politicians like Governor Cuomo have told people, go out and get jobs as essential workers. But the damn thing of it is, even if you're middle class, even if you've been put out of work by the coronavirus, you're now competing with illegal aliens for even the low-end jobs. Now, obviously, this has been the case for millions and millions of Americans, particularly on the low-end scale. If you're an African-American teenager looking for work for the first time, the likelihood is you're not going to find it because you've got the illegal aliens have taken those jobs. A lot of Americans, particularly in the Rust Belt, have been effectively put out of work and prevented from even getting any kind of work because, again, it's just cheaper and easier to hire illegal aliens. Now, because of the effective lack of enforcement, we've outsourced a lot of our production manufacturing to China. At the same time, what there is in this country, for example, take the meatpacking sector. We've had all these outbreaks. The outbreak in South Dakota was largely confined to meat processing plants. Yet at the same time, the people being hired in these meat processing plants are largely people from Latin America, people from Africa. And that's largely the reason why you've had an outbreak there in the first place. So Americans are being cut off even from basic jobs that remain in this country.
Where do unions fall down when it comes to all of this? Because, you would think that unions would be standing up for American workers, but at the same time, unions, generally speaking, back what Nancy Pelosi wants to do, at least the leadership. I don't know about the rank and file. But where do unions fall in all of this?
So back in the day, unions were actually against illegal immigration. They were against immigration. I mean, Cesar Chavez back in the day was urging people to report illegal alien workers. For that matter, environmentalists were against open immigration. And when you go back far enough, you have Bernie Sanders, for example, speaking out against this kind of open border situation. Of course, he flipped like the rest of the Democrat Party flipped, because what the left managed to do was ideologically consolidate the party around a single set of policy positions, which means that unions had to sell out workers. They had to tell workers that we've got to be okay with immigration, we've got to be okay with the amnesty for illegal aliens, and they're all going to join the unions, which of course is nonsense, but really the growth in unions has been in public sector unions rather than private sector unions. Manufacturing unions, workers are in bad shape. So increasingly, it's been government worker unions that have been calling the shots anyway, or unions for workers in industries like hospitals, really, that are essentially closely intertwined with the government.
What do you think is the real sort of motivation? Because again, what I don't understand is how an American politician like Nancy Pelosi can push these sorts of policies that clearly are at the detriment to American workers, American citizens. What do you think the motivation is?
When you talk about Nancy Pelosi, that's California. California is now handing out over 100 million in relief to illegal aliens so they don't actually go back home. And that actually gets at the heart of the problem. California is a one-party Democrat state that stays that way because you have districts that are ghost districts. They've got these phantom populations. Even if the illegal aliens living in them don't vote, they're still counted, and these districts are apportioned based on populations of non-citizens, and this is really the Democrat power base. They need more illegal aliens, whether they're going to amnesty them, whether they're just going to roll them into districts that are going to be purely Democrat, unwinnable by anybody else. This is a major part of their power base. Americans are not part of their power base. Back in the day, they would actually represent American workers. They would represent union labor in the old-fashioned sense. They would be the party of coal miners and factory workers. They've long ago given up pretending to be that. What they are is a majority-minority party that basically rolls together a coalition of identity politics groups, and much of it is really supported by immigration, which means they need open borders. They need massive immigration, legal or illegal, to fundamentally transform America.
So explain that a little bit more. You know, I saw this speech by CEO Medina from the SEIU. This was, many years ago. But he basically said, we want amnesty. We want people to become citizens, illegal immigrants to become citizens, because 2/3 of them will vote Democrat. He drew this direct line between citizenship and Democrat voters. But I'm hearing something, I think, a little different from you, where it's more about the census and creating districts. So not necessarily voters, but human beings within the districts. Am I understanding that correctly?
The long-term goal has always been amnesty. You want these people voting. You want them voting legitimately. At least you want them to be able to legally vote. Until then, of course, they still want open borders. At no point in time can you do a trade where you're actually going to get border security for amnesty. Republicans have tried this. It obviously backfires. It backfired in the previous amnesty. It's never going to work. The Democrats want both an open flow of migrants coming in. They want illegal aliens, in part because, once these people are actually working legally, there's much less demand for them. If you actually have to pay them competitive salaries with Americans, it's not going to work as well. So they do want this illegal alien workforce to keep coming in. And at the same time, they want to be able to say, okay, we've got 28 million people here in this country. We've got to amnesty them. Then they're going to be workers. They're going to join unions. But of course, you're going to get another 28 million illegal aliens to replace them. It's like a conveyor belt.
So what can the average American do about this?
Well, for starters, not to be fooled at this point, the Heroes Act is being touted. It's being touted for all the benefits that average people are going to get. You're going to get checks. You're going to get this. And the Republicans in the Senate don't want you to actually have this stuff. The bottom line is you're going to be out of a job. People in your community are going to be out of a job if this thing were to actually pass and be signed into law by the president. And the bottom line is the Democrats don't represent working people. They represent non-working people. They represent the class of big tech companies in California. They represent assorted corporations that outsource labor. They have no actual interest in working people.
Daniel Greenfield, a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center and a writer at frontpagemag.com. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's Memorial Day on Monday, a time to remember those who sacrificed their lives for ours. My grandfather, George Olson, was a tail gunner on a B-24 in World War II. He was shot down on August 9th, 1944, and was held as a prisoner of war for some 9 months. He was a replacement on 2nd Lieutenant Everett R. Thompson's crew. On May 5th, Thompson's plane was hit by flak over France. While returning to base in England, the plane ran out of gas, and Thompson made the decision to make a crash landing. The windows were covered with ice, so co-pilot 2nd Lieutenant Walter P. Landers attempted the landing. Another crew member, John Bacon of Auburn, Michigan, later told me the hydraulics had been knocked out by flak. A hole was ripped in the belly of the plane, and an engine caught fire. 4 crew members were killed. Navigator William A. Webster of Pulaski County, Arkansas. Bombardier William M. Kendall of Saunders County, Nebraska. Left waist gunner Henry S. Moore of Shelby County, Tennessee. and tail gunner John J. Cleary of San Francisco, California. 4 men gave their lives fighting fascism so we don't have to live under it today. 4 fell, and my grandfather, and because there was a shortage of men, 2 others stood in their place, willing to give their lives for our country as well. And they nearly did, enduring the horrors of a Nazi prison camp during one of the coldest winters on record in Europe. There are countless other stories of sacrifice during other wars for freedom. Let's remember them this Memorial Day. I'm Kyle Olson. This is The Kyle Olson Show.